Hi guys, my name's Seb Shooter. I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now, I'm back from my break and from the craziness that was going on. It's all sorted now, thankfully. But today, I wanted to touch on something that I kind of raised in the videos that I did, not last week because there weren't any, but the week before. And it was in the relationship video where I was looking back on the relationships that I've had with friends, with lovers, and kind of examining them in a way that allowed me to gain some more perspective of kind of what I want from those things relative to where I've come from and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that stood out, one of the things that came up and kind of seemed to stand out to people, which I've had a couple of emails about and a couple of messages here and there, was when I said that when I was in school, when I was younger, before I was particularly confident, before I was an able communicator, before I'd really gotten into understanding how to communicate to people, even if I understood the people that were stood in front of me. When I said that it was that I knew what I wanted, but I couldn't communicate it, and that apparently struck a chord with a fair few of you guys out there. And so I wanted to kind of examine what I was saying a little bit more and go into it in a little bit more depth. So in my case, what I was saying was, at that point in my life, I knew what I wanted. I knew what I was attracted to. I knew what made sense to me, where I wanted to go with things, and all that kind of stuff. It was I could look at a person and go, they are within the limits of what I want. I kind of defined that quite early for myself. You know, it was very much a situation of, after a certain point, as I was kind of approaching adulthood through my teens, it was like there was something that just slotted into place and went, this is what I like. And the unfortunate thing was, then I didn't know how to go about communicating that. I would go off and exaggerate things. I'd go and put things in metaphor. I would have real trouble actually just going up and talking to people. And there have been times even in my adult life where that stuff has come back, and it's just been because of where I've met that person, or in whose company that person's been, how terrifying that interaction has been because of what I want, and how I don't want to screw up, and yet then I ended up screwing up because it seemed so insurmountable to me. There was so much there for me to try and get my head around, to just communicate something that really and truly was very simple, and that now I realise as being very simple. And it was just a case of me going, look, I like you. Being straightforward with it, being confident with it, understanding with it. You know, understanding that that's what's happening with me and maybe not what's happening with them, you know. And there was all of that stuff that I didn't grasp at the time. And from some of the messages that you guys have been sending me, and also some of the work that I've done with clients and people in the past anyway, I realise that I'm not the only person that feels this way. When you look at someone, or you have the definition of what it is that you're attracted to fairly concrete in your head from an early point, but your communication skills haven't developed to the extent that then you can put that across to people. That you can't, when you see that guy or girl that you're attracted to, you know exactly how you want them. You know exactly why you like them. You know, you can define it. You can put it down into those defined concepts, those little boxes in your head that get ticked when you're looking at that person, talking to that person, whatever. But then when it actually comes to fully communicating that to that person, so that there's even the slightest chance of anything going on between you, even if it was just the fostering of a friendship, that's where the stumbling block is, and it's tough. You know, and this is guys and girls. This is where you get the guy who is entirely well-meaning and tries to be as nice as possible, but falls over himself in high school and fails at really getting anything across, and so gets labelled as kind of creepy or weird. Same with girls, where it's like they come on too strong, or they do it in a really weird way, in a way that's maybe a little too over eager, and it terrifies the young guy or the individual that they're approaching. And I'm pitching this in what I'm saying now as it being an issue that happens for kind of younger people because they're not developing. But there are people that even kind of approaching their 50s and 60s who still have these problems simply because their communication skills are not an area where they've had a lot of focus or a lot of development. And I've there are at least a couple of people that I've spoken to in the past who are mid 50s, I think, and from what I recall, and those individuals have exactly the same set of problems as your teen who really likes that girl but doesn't know how to talk to them. And it's tough. It is one of those things where, regardless, in my case, it was just the fact that my communication skills, my ability to put ideas out there into the world, caught up, and my confidence with it caught up more slowly on me defining what I wanted and who I wanted to be and the kind of people that I wanted to be with. But in other cases, it could very well be built from anxiety or a compulsive disorder even, where you are compelled to do things in a certain way, and as a result it comes across strange to others. There are so many other things that could put an individual in this situation that it becomes a bit of a quagmire for people. It's tough to struggle through. And the problem with this is where I've talked about some of this stuff and it's like, look, you can do this and this and this and this and try all of these things to get where you're going. Here's this list of 10 things. In this situation, I can't really do that. If I could talk to each one of you guys individually who, not just the ones that sent me messages, but if there are people that have sent me messages, there are going to be people who have experienced this as well and just haven't spoken out about it, haven't agreed, haven't disagreed, they've just listened and maybe felt better because there are other people out there that have this similar experience. But otherwise, there's this void, and it's another thing that we don't get shown by role models that we're presented with, and we don't get given that much information on. You go and do sex ed when you're in school, if you even do it, depending on where you are in the world. If your school system supports it, you go and do that stuff and it's all STDs and biology and your body's changing, and there's no discussion around how those relationships are supposed to develop, how they're supposed to work, how they're supposed to be healthy, what an unhealthy one looks like, how you should deal with those problems if they arise. And that's one of the biggest issues that I have personally with the way that relationships are kind of dealt with through education anyway, because they're basically just ignored. They're ignored, but the physical elements of it are examined, which leads to curiosity, which leads to people who are already feeling that rush of hormones, that want to be with others and all that kind of thing. They're already experiencing that, and so it becomes a kind of terrible situation where they have everything mechanically explained to them for the physical side. They have these inclinations, these natural inclinations that they're following, but then there's no other information given to them about how all of this stuff works. And so, and that would be a place where you could deal with individuals and have those discussions at large. But here it's a situation where I can't really go, these are the things to try, these are the ways that you can solve it, because there are so many different problems. It could be anxiety, it could be that you aren't used to communicating in the language that you are having to communicate in. It could be like me, that it was just a case of, I tend to be much more of a non-verbal person, as much as you guys see me chatting away on the channel, you know, if I'm given the option, then I much prefer to listen, and I much prefer to sit and allow kind of the others around me to make the noise, so that then if I do say something, hopefully it carries weight with it. And you know, it's just one of those things where as an extrovert, sure, I like throwing myself into those situations, but I much prefer to be aware of those situations and absorb them rather than kind of sit back some more. But it's one of those things where, you know, it took time for my confidence to grow, and it took time for my communication skills, or for me to wrap my head around how I could leverage what communication skills I actually had to do the best that I could do in relationships with people, or in the way that I communicated generally. And you know, I'd love to be able to turn around and go, these are the ways that you solve the problem. But there are so many different factors here that it doesn't really lend itself to that. All I can say is that when you are, you know, firstly, if this is happening to you when you're young, when you're in school, when you're in college, when you're in university, kids are cruel. Kids these days, as much as they grow up so fast, they stay kids for a long time. The whole mindset of being savage and unabashed about potentially like bullying people, those instinctive things, they happen all the way through life anyway. But the childishness of it kind of gets preserved for longer these days, I find, because you can create your little time capsule on social media and other things to maintain that over a longer period. So the first thing I would say is that, yeah, it takes time, it takes practice, it takes working stuff out, but you know, realize the in those moments where it's, you know, oh, you were called weird, oh, you were called creepy, just because you didn't know how to communicate effectively, and it's something that you're working out, don't lose heart because of that. Then on top of that, realize that you're not perfect. You are human. You're a work in progress, and you're going to be right until you stop progressing, which is going to be the day you die. You know, you've got an entire life of continued growth and progress and development that's going to happen. People develop at different rates. There is no schematic for things. You are not going to be able to compare yourself to anyone else. Only compare yourself to who you want to be tomorrow and who you were yesterday. That's it. And there's one last thing. I talked about this ages ago, in regards to the scale of people, and I want to talk about it again later this week as well. Where you have people who, because they find the relationships hard, because they find getting to know people hard, communicating hard, because they've got all kinds of blocks and things in their way, they end up drifting towards either end of the scale of a person, where you're either on the neurotic end, where you're being the nice guy, or you know, a slightly better situation, the latent guy, or girl, where you're kind of either more reserved, or you're both attacking yourself inwardly, but then to make yourself feel better, you're lashing out at the world, even though the world, you're a tiny part of the world. The world's got not taken any notice of you, and that's part of the problem for you. But at the same time, you don't know how to change it, and it's easier to blame than it is to look at yourself and analyze and find a way forward. Or you end up at the psychotic end, where you only ever lash out, where you only ever impose, where you're an arsehole and you just go push the limits on people, impose on people, crush those other people and try and get them to bend to your will. And that's not good either. So, you know, regardless of if you're having a tough time, you know, you're not perfect. You've got to find ways to develop. You're not... you know, the people around you are going to be miserable bastards because we're designed to be. You know, we're designed to cut out the weakest links in our society so that we can grow and develop as a species. it's something that we see in kids. It's something we don't see as much in adults, but that it's something that sticks. It's something that keeps going, and there are reasons for that, and we need to try and kind of step past that and realize that that's something that's going on out there, and it won't change until something's changed in here. Whether that's improving your communication skills, whether it's taking time to have a proper think about how you go about kind of relationships, where you're finding people to try and find that person that you want or whatever. It's a tough thing to try and juggle and shift around to work with. But the most important thing is try and stay level. Don't start blaming the world for your problems in this regard. Don't start attacking the world or people just because you feel you're having a tough time. Like one of the best pieces of advice that was given to me when it came to interacting with other people actually came. Like I was by the time that I got this advice, I was actually very social. I was very happy with the way that I interacted with people. But my God, was this a better way of looking at it, even than the way that I had been with the confidence that I'd built up and the years of managing large teams and the relationships and things that I'd had. And that was something that I was told when I started coaching on my first day, when I first did my introductory certification. And the trainer at the front of the hall got us to do this group exercise, and we had to go around and mingle, meet people, like quick fire coaching stuff. And she said, if you make eye contact with a person and they don't come to shake your hand or say hello, then just take it that they weren't ready for you yet, and they might never be ready for you. But if they aren't, then there is going to be someone else that is. And I said this in other videos where we've been talking about relationships and things in the past as well. There are 7 billion people on the planet. That's a lot of people that you've still yet to meet. Just because one person has turned you down, you still have so many other people to meet that could say yes, give your life more meaning, enrich it in some way, give you everything that you want, whatever. Take it in perspective. There was another thing that was floating around the internet a little while ago, which also rings true, which is, with that many people on the planet, even if only 1% of people find you attractive, it might be a little harder to look for them, maybe. But for the most part, that's still hundreds of thousands of people who will find you their ideal. And trying to keep that in your head is tough because they're such big numbers, they're hard to visualize. But it's still a case of you might know what you want, but the world might not be ready to give it to you. The only way that you can find it is by examining yourself, examining the way that you're interacting with the world, and making it easier for the world and the people that you're interacting with to kind of step up and interact with you more easily. As I've said before in all manner of videos, communication is the key to so much. When I was in school, when I was growing up, when I was developing, I was always told that it's what you know. And even if the adage it's who you know, not what you know, that kept being brought up, I was always being kind of pushed towards learning more, developing more, being more intellectual. The more specialized, the more I know, the more I can use. Even if I don't have some daft certificate, if I've ignored everything else, thrown myself into the subject, and then can take all of that information and apply it, then I win. I come out on top because I've got so many transferable skills. And having those areas of specialization, having all those skills, yeah, that's great. It's really useful. But without communication being one of those skills, and without other people around you, you're not going to get very far. And that's something that needs to be recognized when it comes to examining yourself. Yeah, Communication is the way that we interact with the world, and mostly with the other people that we need to have around us. And if we don't have that, then it becomes tough. So, work on yourself, change your way of thinking just a little bit. Be open and hopeful, but not, don't go out searching for stuff. Yeah. Sometimes the best thing you can do is kind of take a step back and wait. Yeah. Because think about it this way: if you're always looking for something, if you're always hunting for something, no one likes to feel hunted. If you're always that eager, if you're always that focused, then a fair amount of the time, maybe you don't come across as excited and happy with the potential relationship that you're building. You're just hunting for something, searching for something, never satisfied, and that puts pressure on other people. It's you need to learn how to relax into this stuff so that it works better. And again, this is all stuff that takes practice and takes time and is different for every person. So I can't really examine it too broadly. But getting those messages that I got from you guys after the video talking about relationships like a couple of weeks ago, I just wanted to start this week off by touching on it again and going, firstly, I hear you. It's tough and it's miserable, but there are positive and constructive ways to go around the development of yourself, the improved interaction with the world, finding the people that you want to be with, that you've always wanted to be with, that fit the criteria that you have in your head, that are everything that you want. And then there's the negative way to go about it, where you don't look at yourself, where you don't look to change, where you lash out. And I'm going to be talking a bit more on that later this week, because one particular message stood out to me where incels were mentioned, relatively new phenomenon to one extent or another. So I wanted to go and have a look at that. I'll do that much later in the week, I think. But I'd love to hear more of your thoughts and stories on this, because as said, especially when I moved from one secondary school to another, there were girls that I was just like, yes, they are what I like. They are who I want to get to know better. They are who I would like to do things with, to spend more time with, and all the rest of it. And yet, who I fancy, who a romantic relationship with would be nice, and yet being able to communicate that in a decent way, in a sensible way, in a way that would in any way help me socially at the time, not my strong point. Communication was I could write you a story, I could write you an essay, I could communicate ideas and concepts fine. As soon as you asked me to communicate my feelings, my thoughts, things like that to other people that when they weren't based on anything, God, that just boiled down to not being able to do it. It was horrible. It was trapping. It felt trapping. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings on this, guys, because after the messages that I got, after the couple that I got from my email and the other couple that I got from elsewhere, like it was interesting to hear what those people had to say. And we've all got different experiences. This is something that I feel like a lot more people go through, even if it's those people who then go on to eventually suck up the courage and go and say the thing, do the thing, ask the question, and it backfires on them, or it goes really well. Who knows? There are so many different facets to this, and so many different experiences from different people, all around this kind of idea of what you want, but you just can't get it. It would be so interesting to compare notes with all of you guys. But anyway, I'm going to stop kind of waffling and rambling now. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because this is something that when I've talked to friends, when I've talked to clients, when I've talked to everyone, they've all got, there's at least one out of it, maybe every three, that has some kind of story like this, where it's they knew that they really liked this girl, or they knew that they really liked this guy, and yet they couldn't get anywhere with it because they couldn't communicate. They were too nervous. They were filled with anxiety because they didn't think they were good enough. And either people overcome that, people get stuck with it, you know, and it diverges into so many different potential paths that people can walk. That either some overcome, some don't. You know, it's stuff that it's one of the reasons this kind of thing was one of the reasons why when I started coaching and I was doing relationship and dating coaching, it was one of the areas that I focused on because I had spent so much time improving myself within that area, because it was the biggest deficit that I had on kind of leaving education. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video later. Take care.